What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the Clutch Crew Sports YouTube channel and another tier list. My name is Connor, the co-host with the most. Clutch Crew Sports, repping the colors. And today, I've been doing a lot of non-sports tier lists recently. Been doing a lot of food-related ones. I know some people have enjoyed that. But this time I feel like it's time to go back to sports. I was trying to think really hard what I wanted to do. I know that obviously it's over now, but I'm a huge fan of the Olympics. It's you only get to experience it every 4 years, at least the Summer Olympics. If you're a Winter Olympics fan, then it's every 2 years. I've never been the biggest Winter Olympics fan. I don't know. Maybe I'll try watching it because it starts here in like 6 months, which is kind of weird that about 6 months after the Summer Olympics are ending, the Winter Olympics are going to start. But Summer Olympics I've always been a big fan of. I try to watch as much as I can every 4 years, although it was every 5 years this time. And I'm really hoping, 7 years from now, I can get tickets to go to Los Angeles when they have the games in the US. But for now, we're talking about Tokyo, and I decided that I would do a tier list on the sports in the Olympics. There was, honestly, I don't remember how many there were. I'll have to count these. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. So 13 times 3 is 49. Is that right? Am I doing my math? Yeah. 49. No, 39. 39. 39. 41, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 46 sports. So it's a lot of sports. For Tokyo, they actually added 5 new sports. Well, they had 5 new sports, and then they had a couple sports that they put like new variations into. So like basketball was already a sport, but they added like the 3x3 basketball. BMX was always like Bmx Racing was a sport, but I'm pretty sure this was the first year that they did BMX Freestyle as a sport. So I think I see they've also kind of like separated some of these sports a little bit. But yeah, so 46 options here. Like I said, there was 5 completely new ones this year. Well, technically, baseball, softball wasn't completely new, but it was making its return for the first time since Beijing. Unfortunately, baseball, softball will not be returning in Paris in 3 years, along with karate. It's on here somewhere. Yeah, karate was another of the new ones that will not be returning. But the other 3 new sports, which were surfing, skateboarding, and sport climbing, these 3 right here, they will all be returning in 2024 for Paris. So, gonna see how that goes. But I figure, I get a tier list here. Regular tier as always, S, A, B, C, D, F. Now, I will preface this by saying that the sports that I don't like. Now, when I first found this tier list, the bottom tier actually said doesn't deserve to be a sport. That's not my thinking. If I rate a sport in the F tier, it's not because I don't think it should be a sport. There's certain things that I don't like watching, me personally, but I can't deny that there's a lot of skill and talent that goes into them. And I think, like, honestly, anything can be considered a sport at this point. So I'll disagree, like, it should be a sport. Like I said, that's not my thinking. It's more so if I put something low down, it's because I don't personally like it. It's not because I think that it's a bad sport or a bad event or anything. It's just I don't personally like it. So, with that being said, take a breath and let's get into it. So these are in alphabetical order for the most part, I think. Some of them are out of order for some reason. I don't know why. But for the most part, they look like they're in mostly alphabetical order. Like, I don't know why artistic gymnastics is down here after Taekwondo, but we'll just go from the top. And boxing. Now, boxing is really interesting because this is amateur boxing. It's not really the same feel as professional boxing. So it's 3 3-minute rounds. Nothing crazy like they have in professional boxing where they have like 12 or 15 rounds or something like that. It's just 3 3-minute rounds. And then, usually knockouts do happen. They're very rare in amateur boxing, especially when it's only 3 rounds of 3 minutes. Like, unless you just absolutely dominate someone. And even then, like, knockouts still don't happen a fair amount. So it's always judges' decisions. Basically, it's just adding up the scores if people know how boxing works. But also, one thing about amateur boxing that's interesting is that when I was watching it, safety is like the number one thing in amateur boxing, because in real boxing, well, I don't want to call it real boxing, but like professional boxing, you see people bleeding all over the place and like, whatever, and they won't stop the fight unless it's like really bad, they won't stop it. But in amateur boxing, they will like stop the fight if someone starts to get hurt, because it's like, I said, safety is the number one thing in amateur boxing. But for me, it's probably just going to go in. Can I click it? There we go. It's probably just going to go in the C tier for me. Listen, I'm not a huge fan of it. I'm just kind of like, it's interesting, but I don't know. Martial arts has never been the biggest thing for me. That might give you an indication later on of what I feel, but like I said, I guess, I don't know. I like professional boxing more than this. Like, I like I like to see knockouts. I like to see, guys really going at it, men or women. But here it doesn't feel like they're quite going for it as much. It feels like they're just kind of beating around the bush a little bit. So it doesn't make it quite as enjoyable. It is quick, I'll give it that, because some of these sports go on for way too long, and this is quick. So I'll give it that. Canoe Slalom, I'm going to put Canoe Slalom. I'll put Canoe Slalom in the B tier. It's a very interesting sport. I remember I didn't actually realize this was a sport until I got the London 2012 video game. Because a lot of times they're not really good in the US most of the time about showing all the different sports. So I didn't even realize that like canoeing at all was a sport until I got the London 2012 game. I don't know, it was really interesting to me. It's just like, it takes a lot of skill, a lot of power. I mean, they have these man-made whitewater courses that people have to go through the gates, and some of them are upstream gates, which makes them even harder. So it's really interesting to see how like they'll really maneuver their bodies like to just kind of like barely go inside the gates. Like they'll just kind of go like that, and then they're inside the gates. So it's pretty interesting. So I feel like it's a little bit time consuming sometimes. Like, it's one thing for me, I can't watch a lot of it in a row. But Canoe Slalom is going to be B tier. Sorry, my nose is a bit stuffed, so you might hear me like doing that occasionally. So Canoe Sprint, that's going to go in the A tier for me. I like races, I like fast-paced stuff, and especially like the canoes are like good when they do the canoe races, but especially in the kayaks, I love. You just see like there's like water going everywhere, and these people are just going like just like really going for it on the kayaks, and they go like super fast. So it's like I said, it's fast-paced, it's high octane, it's high energy, a little bit of drama. I like things like that. So Canoe Sprint's going to go in the A tier for me. Freestyle Bmx. Now, like I said, this might also give an indication for later on, but for me, Freestyle Bmx is going to go in the D tier. For me, I'm just not a huge fan of sports. This is maybe one of the reasons why I'm not the biggest fan of the Winter Olympics, because a good amount of sports in the Winter Olympics are like this. Sports where you have to do tricks and moves and stuff to get points. Because I feel like sometimes, maybe one of the reasons why I don't like it is because when it comes to things like Canoe Sprint and Canoe Slalom and like track and field and swimming, there's no, like, a clear winner, no doubt. Like, subjective, clear winner. In this, I feel like you can see people who will do like these good routines, and they get some score that's like way less than someone else, even though it's like, okay, well, this routine was fantastic. Like, how are you scoring so much less? I don't know. I'm just not a huge fan most of the time of sports that are subjective. Just because I feel like sometimes, again, it's like opinions are different. There's no subjectiveness about a swimming race. Like, okay, that guy won or that woman won clearly. Like, there's no like, oh, well, in my opinion, this person won. Like, no, there's none of that. So I said Freestyle Bmx. I said sports like that I'm just not a huge fan of for the most part. So that's going to go in the D tier. Now, Bmx Racing on the other part, I'm going to put it in the C tier. Like I said, I usually like races, but Bmx Racing for me, I don't know. It's just, I feel like, I mean, I guess this is part of the charm of it, but I feel like the courses need to be wider. Just because crashes happen so often in Bmx Racing. Like, it's crazy how much crashes happen. And it's really bad because, unfortunately, like, you can have some people that, I will say, it is one sport that is like prime for upset victories, because it happened in Tokyo where like there was a U.S. woman who was, or a U.S. man actually, who was like the defending gold medalist, and he was like a heavy favorite to win again. But then when they were in the semifinals, he got caught up in a crash, and then he got eliminated. So it's a sport that's prime for upsets, but I don't know. I feel like the crashes happen too often. I feel like there's something that like they could do to make it better, to where crashes don't happen as often. Like, I get that that's still part of it. If you get like close together and everything, but I don't know. I just feel like it happens too often. Mountain biking. I'm going to group mountain biking and road cycling both together in the D tier, mainly because they just take a long time. Like, it's one of those things that I said I like fast-paced stuff. I like stuff that doesn't require me to be patient all the time, and they take way too long. Like, just, yay, we're going to sit down and watch a bike race for like 12 hours or something. I mean, it's maybe not that long, but like, 6 or 7 hours, we're just going to sit down and watch a bike race. And it's just like, yay, like, woo. I mean, if you have a family member or something, in that race, then sure, I can get sitting down to watch it for that long, but it's not really that interesting to me, just like sitting there watching, and it's like, you're just kind of watching the TV. I lose focus on stuff really quickly, and when you're in a race where it's like, oh, there's like 25 kilometers still to go, you're just kind of like, just start to fall asleep. So they're going to go in the D tier for me. Track cycling is going to go probably in the B tier for me. Just it's fast paced again. Like I said, the Kieran is very interesting to me. How it's like, I never even knew this because when I was playing the London 2012 video game, it basically started like, it's a 3-lap race basically. And I'm like, okay, like 3 laps. What I didn't realize until this year, because I never really watched too much of it, because again, like I said, NBC doesn't do a really good job of showing everything most of the time. I will say they did a much better job this year. They tried to show almost everything at least once or twice. But so track cycling, like with the Kieran, like I said, I didn't realize that actually it's technically a 6-lap race, but the first like 3 laps are behind like a pace bike basically, and then after that 3rd lap, then everyone's released. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I never realized that. But track cycling, like I said, is going to be B tier. Now, this sport, the next sport, diving. This is like the one sport, like, like I said, subjective sport when it comes to points and stuff and judges. Well, okay, I shouldn't say that because I think I really like gymnastics. We'll get to that later. But diving is one of those other ones that's like, you get judged based on points. And I used to like it more. I'll say that. I used to like it more. It probably would have been in the B tier for me had it not been for this last Olympics. So it's fallen down to the C tier for me, just because I feel like, I don't know, maybe this year in particular when I was watching, like, I don't know, I feel like the judges were getting it wrong. Like, they were going, because there were definitely dives that you could look at and you'd be like, oh yeah, that was really good or that was really bad. But like, I mean, this is nothing against China or the Chinese team, but like, I feel like they have some sort of bias when it comes to the judges, because yeah, they are fantastic. I mean, that one girl in that platform who got like the highest score ever, like, she was fantastic. But I think really in the synchro diving was where I was getting like a sense that I think they're getting a little bit of unfair bias here, because I could clearly, me and my roommate both were watching, I could clearly tell that these people were out of sync. Like, their dives were decent, but they were out of sync. And the judges, and now obviously the judges don't have slow motion replay, but even in real time, you could tell like they're not in sync. And they still got like 9s for their synchro. I was like, how the heck did they get 9s when they were definitely out of sync? So that doesn't make any sense to me. Like, are y'all blind? Are you just like assuming that it's going to be good because the Chinese are so good at diving? Like, and it happened more than once where I was just like, they're out of sync and they got like 8.5s or 9s on their dive. Whereas like, there'd be a British diving pair or like an American diving pair or a Japanese diving pair even that like would do something with better synchro, or maybe even like the same amount of synchro, maybe a little bit out of sync, and they got like 7s. And it's like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. Like, that was the same look, the same synchro level, and yet the Chinese got like 8.5s, and the Japanese / American / everyone else got like 7s. So I don't know. This was the first year where I really thought that. Like, the rest of the years, I thought the judging was good. But this was the first time when I was watching it that I was like, wow, it seems to me like these judges are really helping these Chinese divers out. So I don't know. But that's why diving, it would have been in the B tier, but it's in the C tier for me now because of that. Hopefully it gets better in 3 years. Equestrian. This is probably going to be... This is something if this was my sister doing this, she'd put this up in the S tier. But for me, it's probably going to go, I don't know, probably in the D tier. I don't know. It's just not. I will say one thing that I do think is very unique about equestrian that I like. It is the one sport in all of the Olympics and really in all of like from everything for the most part, unless they have like a mixed relay, which they introduced this year. Like equestrian is the one sport where men and women compete against each other. So I think that's really cool. Because I mean, really, it's like there's no like physical barriers to that or anything. Like I know like when it comes to basketball, for example, like you know the men are just so much taller and stronger for the most part that like if you put NBA players against WNBA players, like it'd be no contest. The NBA players would crush them just because like the it's really the size difference. I mean they're both really talented at shooting and whatever, but like just the size and strength difference is like it would be impossible to overcome. So but equestrian, since everyone's riding horses, men and women get to compete against each other. So I think that's really cool. But it just doesn't do much for me. Just watching, horses jump over stuff. Like, yay, some people enjoy it. I know my sister enjoys it, but it doesn't really do anything for me. 3x3 basketball. This was one of the new sports this year. This was an immediate jump up to the A tier for me. I had a really fun time watching the 3x3 basketball. I thought it was going to be good, and it definitely lived up to it. It's like half court basketball. It's like what you play with your buddies, out at, wherever you go to play basketball, like in the gym or whatever, or just like in school, you used to play half court basketball. And it's basically like a glorified game of 21, it's whoever gets to 21 first, or at the end of 10 minutes, I think it is, then it's like whoever's ahead. But also, it's got the traditional rules, like you have to take it out, I do think it's kind of interesting. I know the one place it differs from 21 is in 21, if you hit the rim with your shot, then, and like you miss it, for example, then you have to, the opposing team, when they get the rebound, they have to take it back out. But in 21, if you get blocked or you launch up an air ball, then the other team doesn't have to take it back. They can just grab it and put it up immediately. So that's the one place where it differs. I mean, obviously, air balls don't happen too often, so it's not like it's a common thing, but it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. So A tier for 3x3. Fencing I'm going to put in the C tier, mainly just because I think fencing is a really cool sport. It's just hard to track sometimes. Like, it's so funny, like these commentators, they'll be able to pick out like, oh yeah, they got the touch right there, and I'm like, wait, they did? I'm like, I can't even tell what's happening. Like, I didn't see that, but clearly they saw it. And I mean, I know that the foils have, or sabers, or whichever one you're using, they have like sensors in them. So that way, when you do get a touch, like the person who gets the touch, like their helmet will light up to tell them like they got a touch or something. So that's one way for, I guess, everyone else to really get an idea. But it's just kind of hard to watch sometimes when I'm just like, I didn't see that. Like, I guess everyone else saw it, or the commentators and the judges saw it, but I didn't see it. So, soccer is probably going to go in another probably C tier one for me. I've never been the biggest fan of soccer. It's just a long slog. Like, I will say, out of all the sports in the Olympics, soccer always takes the longest. Like, it starts before the Olympics even start, and it doesn't end until like the very end of the Olympics. So it definitely goes on for the longest. And it's just like I said, soccer I've never been the biggest fan of. Maybe that's just my preferences. But soccer, like I said, I'll still watch it if it's like a finals match or something. But for the regular like pool play matches, I'm like, I don't really care. Golf. This is gonna be the first F tier sport. Golf is like the most boring thing in the world to watch. I don't know how else to describe it besides it's like watching grass grow. I don't know. Golf F tier. Sorry, golf fans. Sorry, Grandpa Conger. I don't like watching golf. Handball. Handball is an interesting sport. I don't really know where I would put it just because I haven't watched much of it. From what I did watch, it looked, I mean, like I said, I didn't really understand the rules as much, so I don't know, I'll put it in the C tier. Like I said, it looked interesting. I didn't quite understand the rules of it. but it's another sport that goes on for a long time. Like, it's one of the sports that goes from like really early in the Olympics until the very end. So, it's, like I said, I'm just gonna put it in the C tier because I don't really know how else to describe it. Field hockey. I don't know. Maybe this is just me being a big fan of ice hockey, but field hockey for me is going to go in the D tier. I just, man, we're really like, these bottom tiers are really filling in. We're getting to all the sports that like I don't really watch. So trust me, the better sports are coming. But yeah, field hockey is just, like I said, I'm a huge fan of ice hockey. Like, if ice hockey, like for the Winter Olympics, that's like S tier. But field hockey is probably going to just sit in the D tier for me. I'm not a big fan of it. Judo, I'll put like, okay, this is what I'm going to put. I'm going to put judo, karate. Where is it? I'm looking for Taekwondo and wrestling. These I'm all going to put in the C tier because I don't understand them. Like, I don't know how the scoring works. Like, they're interesting to watch. Like, martial arts, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of them, but I think they're interesting to watch. It's just, I don't understand how the scoring works in a lot of them. I'm just kind of like, all of a sudden someone will get a point, and I'm like, wait, what? Like, they got a point? So, they're going to be in the C tier for me. Like I said, they're interesting to watch. I feel like if I understood them more, I could put them in the B or the A tier. I just don't understand them as much. So, sorry, but they're in the C tier. Marathon swimming. This is very similar to me for like road cycling and mountain biking. Like, it just takes forever. So D tier. Sorry. Takes too long. Modern pentathlon. Now this I'm going to put in the B tier just because I think it's so interesting. It's such a mix up of just like random sports. Like, someone decided that, oh, like swimming, fencing, shooting, equestrian, and track and field should all be put together in an Olympic event, and that's what you're going to get a medal in. So, and I said, it's interesting. It's an interesting mashup of sports. I don't know who came up with it, but it's interesting. I'll give it that. Like, I don't know. It's really interesting just to watch, like, especially if you watch like the swimming and the track and field, for example, like how average they are at it compared to like regular track and field athletes, or regular swimming athletes. But then of course, like, they have to have a very wide range of skills. So while they're not necessarily good at like as good at the sport as like most of the regular Olympic athletes, they're like exceptionally good at all of them, which they have to be. So very interesting. Rhythmic gymnastics. This is going to be another one like golf that's going to go in the F tier. I've just never seen the appeal in rhythmic gymnastics. Like, again, I don't deny that it takes talent to do it. I mean, it certainly does, because I'm sure I could never do that. But I don't know. It just doesn't do anything for me. So, sorry. Archery. I was disappointed that this didn't actually get more of a feature this year during the Olympics, because I really like it. I'm putting it in the A tier. I don't know. I've always liked shooting a bow and arrow. I think the competition is interesting, just to see, and it doesn't last very long. So, like I said, I like stuff that doesn't go on for too long, and I don't know, it's just very interesting to watch, especially the team events. I like watching how each archer gets one arrow, and they have to get that combined score. So it definitely is a sport where you have to have a good team, because even if one person goes out there and hits like a 7, then you're probably screwed because the other team's going to be hitting 9s and 10s. So archery I've always enjoyed. It's going to go in the A tier. Also going to be going in the A tier, I'm going to put rowing up in the A tier. Just like Canoe Sprint, it takes a little bit longer than Canoe Sprint does, but I don't know. It's just one of those sports I've always enjoyed watching rowing. I like races, like I said before, and rowing is definitely fun. Rugby. Now, rugby, this was a sport that I wasn't really familiar with up until this Olympics. Like, I was kind of just like, oh, rugby, like, I've heard of rugby, but I didn't really know the rules. I will say, after watching a game of rugby sevens at the Olympics, I might be more interested in watching more rugby in the future. So this is going to go in the B tier. I had a fun time watching it. It's like, it's not exactly like football without pads, but, it's pretty interesting because, of course, they always have to pass it backwards. They can kick it forward if they want to try and get, like, the ball forward and see if someone can run after it. and they always have to do like a lot of drop kicks to get like the extra points and stuff. So rugby, I'm going to go ahead and put in the B tier. Sailing is going to be another D tier for me. Like I said, it's something I don't quite understand as much. I mean, I guess it's a race, but I don't know. It's not as interesting to me. It's like again, it's like long distance races, which are not interesting to me. Shooting, this is probably going to go in the B tier for me. This is something that they don't usually show any of, really, during the Olympic shows, which is too bad, because honestly, I think shooting's pretty interesting. Like, watching the skeet competition and watching the air rifle, and even just watching, like, the rapid-fire pistol, just, like, seeing these people, like, in the span of 4 seconds hit 5 targets in a row with a pistol, and they all be, like, super accurate. Like, that takes a lot of talent. So, shooting, to me, is also very interesting. Skateboarding made its debut here in the Olympics. I'm actually going to group skateboarding and surfing together. Because, I mean, again, they're very similar to, like, BMX Freestyle, where, like, you do tricks and try and get points. I thought the street skateboarding was more interesting than the park skateboarding, just because the park skateboarding was, like, you get 3 runs, and, you know, and, like, whatever your highest score is in each of those 3 runs, you get. And then kind of the same thing in surfing, like, you know, it's like they go out in the water for, I think it's like 15 minutes or something, 15 to 20 minutes, and they just have to try and get the best score they can. But I thought the park skateboarding or the street skateboarding was more interesting in terms of how the competition worked. And this, by the way, I'm going to put them both in the C tier. But it was interesting because it's like they got 2 runs, you know, throughout the street course to see, like, you know, do tricks and get a high score. But then they did like 5 individual, it was like the best trick you can do. And they got to do that 5 times. And basically they would take their 4 best scores and put them together. And then that would form your score. Rather than just like in the park skateboarding, it was like your best score on a run. So I don't know. That was kind of interesting when I heard how they did the scoring for that. But regardless, skateboarding and surfing are going to go C tier. Sport climbing, another new entrant into the Olympics. This is going to go in the B tier for me. I was very interested in sport climbing. I remember when I heard that they were going to make it a sport, I was like, man, like, I wonder what this is all about. Like, it sounds cool. And it was pretty interesting, you know. I'm hoping that in the future that they will introduce more sport climbing events, because since this was the first time for sport climbing, they pretty much just put all the different, because there's 3 disciplines in sport climbing. There's speed, bouldering, and lead. And I'm not going to go and explain those for everyone. If you want to look them up, then you can. But basically, they did like a combined event for both the men and the women. And the way it worked was, in the finals, there'd be 8 people competing in the finals. Like, they did a qualification round that had, you know, quite a few people. But basically, you had 8 people in the finals, and your scores basically, so if you got like first place on the speed round, you got 1 point. If you got like 5th place on the bouldering, then you got 5 points. And then say you got like 6 points or 6th place on the lead, then you get 6 points. So your total score ends up multiplying. So since you got 1 point for speed, 5 for bouldering, and then 6 for lead, you multiply all those together. So 5 times 1, 5, and then 6 times 5 is math. 6 times 5 is 30. So basically you end up with 30 points, and it's whoever has the lowest score. So theoretically, the lowest score you could get is 1, because if you get first place on every event, 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. So that's theoretically the lowest score you can get. And then theoretically the highest score you could get would be, what's 64 times 8? Whatever 64 times 8 is. Something super high. So, but anyway, it's interesting because, you know, it's one thing that, like, you don't have to be super good at, like, you have to be really good at 2 events. I will say that. But, like, you can be kind of bad at 1 event and still win. So, for example, like, if you're not really good at speed and you get, like, say, 6th in speed, but then you're really good at bouldering and really good at lead, so you get, like, 1st in bouldering and 2nd in lead, that's still, like, a potential for a gold medal in that scenario, because that's only 12 points. Or even if you get, like, 1st in both, that's only 6 points. That's pretty much guaranteed a gold medal. So, but yeah, it was interesting. I found it very entertaining, and I'm hoping that in the future that they kind of introduce, like I said, they only gave out medals for the combined event, but I'm hoping in the future they'll like kind of split it up into individual events. So like, yeah, we'll still have the combined event, but also have like individual medals for bouldering, individual medals for speed, and individual medals for lead. I think that'll be really fun if they do that. So sport climbing, great debut, best of the new sports, along with 3x3 basketball. Those two were the best new sports in my opinion. Swimming, being from the U.S. and, we have a great history with this, I have to put it in the S tier. Like, I've always enjoyed watching swimming. I think it's one of the best Olympic sports to watch. Anyone can enjoy swimming. So, and also it obviously helps that, the U.S. has a lot of success in it. So maybe I'm being biased there. But swimming for me is easily going to go in the S tier. Table tennis. Now, this is probably going to go in the C tier for me. I don't usually watch much of the table tennis, but the table tennis is always very interesting. Like, I don't know how these people do it. Like, when I'm playing ping pong, I'm just kind of like, going kind of slow paced, like making sure I hit the ball and at least just get it over. I'm not trying to do anything fancy. These guys are like going at high speeds, and I'm like, how are you doing this? Like, that ball is like this big, and the paddle you're holding is only like this big. And so it's like, how are you doing this and still getting it on the table? I don't know. There's some wizards, especially the Chinese. Like, that's their sport, table tennis, and they are just unreal in table tennis. I'm like, I don't know how y'all do it, but props to y'all. Artistic gymnastics. On the other end of the spectrum from rhythmic gymnastics, artistic gymnastics for me is going to go in the A tier. I've always had fun watching the gymnastics. I like watching the women's more than the men's, just because some of the men's events I feel like are kind of boring to watch. I don't know, like, they've obviously got like the high bar and the vault and the floor, which are pretty interesting, but like, I don't know, just watching the rings and the pommel horse, I'm just kind of like, I don't know, I get bored watching those. And like the parallel bars is okay too, but the women, I feel like all 4 events are fun to watch, like vault, uneven bars, balance beam, and floor. They're all fun. And I do kind of like that, at least with the women on the floor exercise, that it's like more of a show. Because for the men, it's just kind of like, do your flips and be done with it. But the women, they actually kind of put on like a show when they're doing it. So I think it's actually more interesting to watch the women do it. But artistic gymnastics is still very fun to watch. So I'll definitely put that up in the A tier. Tennis. Tennis is kind of going to go in the same thing as like football and handball. It's just like a sport that I'm not terribly interested in, and it takes a long time. I debated putting tennis in the D tier, but tennis I'll keep in the C tier for now. Novak Djokovic freaked out, if any of y'all saw that at the Tokyo Olympics, and it was so funny too, because he came out and said something like, I think it was a couple years ago, or maybe like a year ago. He said this when Simone Biles pulled out of the gymnastics. He basically came out and he was like, the best athletes are the ones that know how to, like, handle the pressure and handle the spotlight. Kind of trying to, like, he took a little jab at her. And then it was so funny watching him melt down, because he lost in the semifinals, so he wasn't going to win the gold medal. And then he ended up going to the bronze medal match, and he lost the bronze medal match, and he, like, freaked out. He, like, broke a couple of his rackets. He threw one of them into the stands, and I'm like, man, that comment didn't really age well, talking about handling pressure. Like, he freaked out. So, I don't know. That was the highlight of the tennis for me, just watching Novak Djokovic completely lose his mind. But other than that, tennis, C tier. Trampoline. This is another interesting, like I said, it's like artistic gymnastics. I'm going to put it in the B tier. I don't think it's as interesting as some of the events in artistic gymnastics, but trampoline's still very fun to watch, so B tier for that. Triathlon. I mean, I probably should have grouped all these like distance races together. Are there any more on here? I don't think so. I think we got through all of them. Yeah, just D tier for me. I don't think I have to explain it. Regular volleyball. Regular volleyball for me is going to go probably in the C tier. Like it's one of those things that I enjoy watching it like at the start, and then I get bored of it, just because I feel like it goes on for too long. Regular volleyball matches can go on for a really long time. Like, it's best of 5 as opposed to best of 2, best of 3 with beach volleyball. And also, like I said, there's a lot more players, So rallies can go on for a lot longer. So I don't know, it just makes the game longer. It's still enjoyable, but like I said, I think it's something that I enjoy watching for a bit and then I get bored of. So like I said, I feel like it goes on too long. So regular volleyball is going to go in the C tier, but I still like it. Water polo, this is going to go in the B tier for me. Water polo is, I don't know if anyone can convince me otherwise. Water polo, in my opinion, has to be like the toughest sport out of all of these. Like just how you have to play it. Like there's deep water that you're playing in. There's no like, oh, let me just pop down to the bottom for a second and relax. Like, nope, you have to be sitting there treading water, fighting with the other players. It's exhausting. And then swimming all the way down the pool, like if you don't get a goal or something, now we got to swim all the way back down to the other end and then swim all the way back. Like it has to be, like I said, the hardest sport, in my opinion, out of all of these. Like it just seems so exhausting watching it, but it's still fun to watch. So we're going to put it in the B tier. Weightlifting, probably going to go in the D tier for me. I don't know. It's just something I've never been interested in. Like, again, these people are incredible. They're feats of strength that they lift these bars, but I don't know. Just something about people coming out and lifting a weight bar doesn't appeal to me. So, I don't know. Artistic swimming. This is going to fit in the same category as rhythmic gymnastics for me. I just never appealed to me at all. Like, again, I know it takes a lot of talent and it takes a lot of skill, but it is something that I fall asleep watching. Like, I'd rather just do something else whenever it comes on. So, I mean, and the part that kind of is like a little bit of a Debbie Downer for me when it comes to these two sports is that, like, they both don't really start until the end of the Olympics. So, like, all the coverage at the end of the Olympics is all like these two sports. And I'm like, okay, well, great, thanks. I might as well just not watch the Olympics now because I don't like either of these. I wish they were spread out. But, so sorry, I know there's a lot of people who like these two sports, but I just don't like them. I don't know. There's nothing about them that appeals to me. Athletics, track and field. This is S tier. I don't know what else to say about them. Just, again, the track in particular is really fun to watch. I mean, who doesn't love watching the 100 meters? Who doesn't love watching the 200 meter finals? Who doesn't love watching the 4x100? I don't know. It's all classic stuff. It's stuff that's been around forever. Sports that are timeless. And even watching the field events, like watching the long jump and the pole vault and the javelin, it's all really, really fun. And like I said, they're timeless. They've been around forever. I think that's really cool about them that, like, they've been doing discus throw since the beginning of the Olympics. Like, not even the beginning of the modern Olympics, but like the beginning of the Olympics, like in ancient Greece. They've been doing things like discus and javelin throw and stuff like that. So athletics has to be S tier for me. And I think it's really cool how, like, swimming and athletics, I think, really work out together because it's like the first half of the Olympics, they do all the swimming. And then the second half, they do all the track and field. So it's like, you still get the best of both worlds. Like, when one great thing is ending, another great thing starts. So you don't get bored, I guess. Badminton. Badminton is a very interesting sport to me. I love to play badminton. It's probably C tier for me. Like I said, I love to play it. Watching it, maybe not so much. I don't know. It kind of feels like watching table tennis. Like, I enjoy playing ping pong, but I don't really like watching it. Badminton, I like playing a lot, but watching it, maybe not so much. I don't know. I don't know what it is about it, why I never got into it. Because, like I said, I love to play it. I mean, it's one of my favorite sports to play, but watching it for me has just never done it for me. I don't know. All right, baseball/softball. This is going to go D tier for me. I've never liked watching baseball. This is another, like, classic sport. I mean, golf, I can kind of say this too. Like, I like to play golf and I like to play baseball, but watching it is like watching paint dry. Like, I don't know, maybe it was different in the Olympics. I didn't really watch much of it. But just baseball in general, just my experience, like, it just takes way too long. Like, okay, it's like it takes 2 minutes in between pitches sometimes. And it's like, okay, can we just get on with it? Like, why do we have to have this thing where, okay, the pitcher, like, steps up on the mound and does his routine. Oh, but now I got to step off. Oh, and now I got to step back on and do my routine again. And it just takes forever in between pitches. It's like, just get up there, do a pitch, then, like, maybe, like, wipe off the sweat, get the ball ready, and then pitch again. Don't take like 2 minutes. It takes maybe 30 seconds. So, listen, that's why I've always not enjoyed watching baseball and softball, because, softball, I think, is slightly more interesting, but both of them, in my opinion, are a bit boring. Regular basketball is going to go in the B tier for me. It probably would go in the A tier if it wasn't for the fact that some of the FIBA rules I don't like some of the international rules I don't like. I like how they have the 4 10-minute quarters. I think that's great. It makes for a quicker game. But first of all, there's no 3-second violation in international play, which I think is stupid. Because especially, I saw this a lot in the U.S. versus France final game. Rudy Gobert basically could just spend the whole game camping in the paint. And it's just okay, well, that's not fair. There's a reason why in the NBA they have the 3-second rule, and in the NCAA they have the 3-second rule. There's a reason why they have this. And I don't know, for some reason in international play they don't have a 3-second rule. I think it's dumb. So that is annoying to me. And also, just because, I feel like the way the bonus works in FIBA is a bit different. And I don't know, I feel like when I was watching that game, France got into the bonus, way quicker than they should have. And, it just spent, the entire second part of, the first quarter, they were shooting free throws the whole time. So, I don't know. A couple of the rules are wonky, but at its core, it's still basketball. And it has more of a college basketball feel, which I like, because I enjoy watching college basketball quite a bit more than I like watching the NBA. And like I said, it has more of a college basketball feel, which I like. So, basketball in the B tier. And finally, beach volleyball. This is an A tier sport for me. It goes a lot quicker and it's a lot more interesting to me than regular volleyball. I've always enjoyed watching beach volleyball a lot more. Like I said, it goes quicker. There's less players. And I don't know, it just feels more like the traditional volleyball. When you think about volleyball, you think about, playing with your friends on the beach, and that's what this is. So, beach volleyball A tier. Whew, that was a lot of sports to get through. My voice is starting to go. But just a quick recap before we go. In the S tier, we have swimming and athletics. A tier is canoe sprint, 3x3 basketball, archery, rowing, artistic gymnastics, and beach volleyball. B tier is canoe slalom, track cycling, modern pentathlon, rugby, shooting, sport climbing, trampoline, water polo, and basketball. C tier is boxing, Bmx racing, diving, fencing, football/soccer, handball, judo, karate, taekwondo, wrestling, skateboarding, surfing, table tennis, volleyball, and badminton. D tier is Bmx freestyle, mountain biking, road cycling, equestrian, field hockey, marathon swimming, sailing, triathlon, weightlifting, and baseball/softball. And F tier, golf, rhythmic gymnastics, and artistic swimming. So that's going to wrap it up, guys. Make sure to leave a comment down below what your favorite Olympic sport is, what your least favorite Olympic sport is, and make sure to leave suggestions for future tier lists. I'm hoping to get back to doing this every 2 weeks. I know the episode before the last, I took a couple weeks off, but I'm definitely trying to do this every 2 weeks, so make sure to leave your suggestions, sports and non-sports. I'll do whatever you want. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at clutchcrewsport. Leave your suggestions there as well. And be sure to tune in for new episodes of Clutch Crew Sports every Tuesday. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and as always, be clutch.